My grandfather spent his working life on Kauai. He was an engineer who built the breakwater at Port Allen. My father grew up on the McBride sugar plantation. My grandparents retired to Honolulu, so I feel a real connection to Kauai, and I'm just really grateful to be here. I submitted really detailed testimony about toxicity of pesticides, both via email and via hard copy this morning. I'm not going to bore you with that again. I hope you'll take a look at it. I did want to just talk briefly about some things that I heard today. One was this question about restricted use pesticides and why are we concerned about general use pesticides? Aren't the restricted ones the problem? So just to be clear, the definition of restricted use pesticides for the most part is pesticides that are acutely toxic. So you can have pesticides with long-term health effects that aren't classified as restricted use pesticides. Next, I wanted to talk about what you call disclosure, which in California we call pesticide use reporting. It's kind of the same thing. California's had a pesticide use reporting law that began in 1990. As you know, California has the biggest agricultural economy in the country. Agriculture is still very successful in California. It hasn't been a problem. And with all due respect to the agricultural folks who testified today, with the exception of Kauai Coffee, those other companies are doing agricultural business in California and doing it successfully. So I think that disclosure or use reporting is not a problem. With buffer zones, California law allows counties to set up buffer zones around schools. All of the major agricultural counties in California have buffer zones around schools. Agriculture has not gone out of business in any of those counties. It's been a successful way of protecting children from pesticides. And as I said, if they can do it in California, they can do it here. And then the last thing I wanted to just toss out, there was some discussion about permitting. So I just wanted to explain how that works in California. It's been very successful. So County Agricultural Commissioner issues permits for applications of restricted use pesticides, not the general ones. So if there's some kind of a need for a compromise on the permitting portions of the bill, that is something that you could think about.
Thank you very much. Question from Councilmember Bynum.
You said County Commissioner of Agriculture. California counties have a County Commissioner of Agriculture?
Every county in California has a County Agricultural Commissioner whose job it is to enforce the rules about pesticide use and a lot of other agricultural related things in each county.
One other question. To your knowledge, has anyone ever studied the impacts of the research practices that are occurring here with high volumes and high frequencies of spraying? I mean, my view is that all of these regulations assume production ag. I'm looking for somebody to tell me anybody studied this. These practices that are different than the production that we heard today.
So are you saying is small-scale agricultural different than the
No,
big?
what I'm saying is we have testimony that the research practices involve spraying pesticides on average of 240 times a year on one field. And they're spraying quantities much higher than production ag, is what this data shows. Has anybody studied that? You know, the labels assume that you're not going to spray every day, right?
Right. So in my experience in California, the pesticide use reporting data, the actual amounts of pesticides, have been used for a lot of health studies. So that would be, you know, up to and including whatever is allowed by the label. If it's more than that, it wouldn't have been included in those kind of studies. Does that make sense?
It doesn't. I mean, if anybody can answer this question anywhere, please tell me, because the label seems to assume, and these regulations, that this is for production agriculture. You know, I grew up in California. I spent 2 summers in Los Banos in the Central Valley, right? That's all production ag. They spray lots of chemicals, but they don't spray frequently, right? A production, you know, once you spray a pesticide, you expect that it's going to work at least for a while, that you don't have to spray pesticides again in 3 days. And so I believe that the practices, the research practices that are happening here are different than production agricultural practices.
And I'm sure you're absolutely right.
And I want to know if anybody studied the research practices where these pesticides are being applied frequently and at high levels. That's not happening in California on those production fields.
And I think one of the reasons why having some ability to regulate pesticide use at the county level so that it can take into account these local conditions and local circumstances is really, really important.
Thank you.
That it's not possible to look at it as a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Thank you.
Other questions, Councilmember Yukimura? Wait, one more question?
So in this use reporting requirements, they cover both restricted and general use pesticides?
Yes, it covers all agricultural pesticide use and a few other things in addition to agricultural pesticide use, but we'll just focus on that.
And was this done by county legislation or state legislation?
The law in California is a state law.
It is a state law? Okay, thank you.
And if you could restate your credentials, for the want of a better word, I missed that when you introduced.
I'm the research director at the Center for Environmental Health in Oakland, California.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Council Chair Faro.
Yes, could you possibly send us, I'm sorry, BC, could you possibly send us a scope of work and qualifications for a county ag commissioner in California?
Sure, I'd be happy to get that for you and email it to the council.
Yeah, I'll have someone from my staff contact you. Thank you, Mr. Weezer.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Cox.
Ellison